I am thankful that Donald Trump is losing it. Yes, he's lashing out. This is to be expected. But his presidency is failing, and his worst flaws, personal, physical, policy flaws, are being exposed. Yesterday, on Thanksgiving, he had a complete and utter meltdown. Yes, this is actually, I did scribble on it. This is an unretouched photo. I just stripped out the background of Donald Trump at a press conference yesterday, utterly, utterly enraged. And why? Why is he losing it? He cannot handle the truth. He just can't. And he has no compassion. So let's back up and talk about Sarah Beckstrom. Sarah Beckstrom, may she rest in peace, is a 20-year-old, a 20-year-old member of the National Guard. And Beckstrom died yesterday after being shot a couple of days ago while she was at the U.S. Capitol as part of the West Virginia National Guard. Now, let's be clear. She was one of two people who were shot. The other person is Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, and he is now in critical condition. I'm going to talk about the shooter in a moment, who is and apparently still alive, an Afghan national trained by our CIA in an elite unit in Afghanistan and granted asylum by, drumroll, Donald Trump's administration this April. Okay, let's just start there. Now, Sarah Beckstrom, may she rest in peace, again, was part of this National Guard unit from West Virginia put in DC. And here's the legal piece of this. What you might remember is that a federal court last week ruled that the National Guard could not be in DC, right? So this was a court that said this was it was on the 21st. So we are talking literally a week ago, last Friday, a federal court blocked Trump's National Guard troops from being at the Capitol. So I want to share that with you because I got to tell you, without Donald Trump, Sarah would have not been put in harm's way in the way she was. Now, let's be clear. The court blocked this West Virginia National Guard from being in D.C., but put that order on hold pending appeal. So let's start with that. I want to share the screen so you can get the full legal background here. Here we go. Let me just turn this up.
Some other headlines that we're tracking for you this hour. Good news for home buyers right before the holiday season begins as mortgage rates hit their lowest levels of the year. Rates currently at about 6.2%, a full point lower.
I'm going to get
it today.
Sorry.
$5 less, heading back down under.
Yeah, this is not.
Some other headlines that we're tracking.
Sorry, guys. I was not able. I thought I had the right clip there, but anyway, a federal judge did block the deployment of the National Guard, and that happened. Her name was Judge Gia Cobb, but she put her order on hold for 21 days. And let me just get the proper clip there for you guys so you can actually you can actually see it. And I'm so sorry. Sometimes it doesn't actually work the way you would think. But here we go. I'm now going to share this with you, and this should be fine. Happy Thanksgiving. Okay, one sec. I got this. This should work. Let's go.
A federal judge is ordering the Trump administration to end its months-long deployment of National Guard troops to help police the nation's capital. A U.S. district judge concluded Thursday that President Donald Trump's military takeover in Washington, D.C. violates the Constitution and illegally intrudes on local officials' authority to direct law enforcement in the district. However, the judge put her order on hold for 21 days to allow for an appeal. District of Columbia Attorney General Brian Schwab sued to challenge the Guard deployments. He asked the judge to enjoin the White House from deploying Guard troops without the mayor's consent. In August, President Donald Trump issued an executive order declaring a crime emergency in Washington. Within a month, more than 2,300 National Guard troops from 8 states and the district were patrolling the city under the command of the Secretary of the Army.
Okay. So that is, of course, my friends, the context. And the wheels of justice grind. The gears of justice grind slowly, so slowly that now Sarah Beckstrom, a 20-year-old young person with so much promise, has died. I want to tell you a little bit more about Sarah Beckstrom. Apparently, she's from West Virginia, and what I have read, and keep in mind, this is just what I have read. These are positive things that I am hearing, that at first that she got to DC and was kind of, not happy to be away from home. And then she kind of got used to it a little bit, saying, I'm getting to see things I didn't see before in West Virginia. What I've also read is that she volunteered to do extra time or overtime. So friends of hers who wanted to go home and be with their families for Thanksgiving could. And I'm imagining she's 20 years old. It's not stated, but these might be people with children. And maybe, she wanted, or bigger families, or, or whatever the concern was. We get the sense, or I get the sense from reading, that she was just a lovely person, cared about others, her family, and now she is gone. I don't know much more about her. My heart goes out to her family, and of course, also to the family of Sergeant Andrew Wolf, who is waiting to know more about him. Now, let me just say, yesterday, when Donald Trump was asked whether he planned to go to Sarah's funeral, because he was holding a whole press conference and raging, apparently, about how terrible it is that she was killed. Maybe that's what he's doing, one would think. But when he is asked about that, you'll never believe. No, I think you will believe what he said. Let's just play it.
Early stages, obviously, but do you plan to attend Sarah's funeral?
I haven't thought about it yet, but it certainly is something I could conceive of. I love West Virginia. I won West Virginia by one of the biggest margins of any president anywhere. And it's, these are great people. I love the people of West Virginia. I love the people of our country. But I haven't given it any thought, but it sounds like something I could do, yeah. It's very raw.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sorry. He didn't say Sarah's name. He doesn't know how to say anything appropriate, ever. I'm in a state of shock. Actually, I've seen that clip now a few times, and it still is utterly shocking to me that a young person loses her life serving her country on a holiday where she should have been home with her family. following what appears to be an unlawful order because a federal judge has ruled that. And he says nothing about her. He hasn't thought about going to the funeral, and he admits that. He doesn't say something which would be appropriate, which would be, I want to leave that choice to her family. The problem with me attending an event like that could be to draw too much attention to the whole security apparatus around me. And I want to pay our respects to her. But this, it's up to her family what kind of event they would like to have to honor the loss of this wonderful young person. That might be one thing to say. But instead, Donald says, well, the people of Virginia like me and they voted for me, as if he's making it a campaign event. And I am actually shocked right now that I feel physically nauseous. I did not expect that, but me even saying this, I'm actually having a moment here. It is really awful. Now, he says worse things, but I want to now pivot to what we know about this shooter, because this is really important. Because, of course, Donald Trump and Stephen Miller are using this tragedy, using this shooting of these two members of the National Guard as a hook for them, as a way in which they can now further attack immigrants and further try to propel more unconstitutional policies. And we'll get to how they're doing that. So I think it's really important to understand this person's background and likely the mental health issues, plus the actual CIA training that he received in combat that created both the conditions and the skills that he used to do this. And let me be clear. The only person who pulled that trigger was the alleged shooter. And there are a lot of people who serve in the military, who have PTSD and training, who do not go out and do this. So I am not making excuses for him, and I'm not trying to malign veterans or people who worked with the U.S. In combat missions. I am just describing, the reason why I'm describing this is because Donald Trump and Stephen Miller are trying to make a cause and effect argument, trying to say, because this man is an immigrant, all immigrants are bad. That's what they're trying to say, right? This is not an argument they make when the shooter of Charlie Kirk or the Donald Trump, the shooter who apparently the bullet clipped Trump in the ear, or if you believe like I do, it was just some glass from the teleprompter that gave him a little nick on his ear. Whatever it is, those people were white men. And it would be outrageous to say we need to lock up or deport all white men who, you could say, there's all kinds of things you could say to extrapolate based on a category that someone belongs to and then try to demonize everyone in that category. And I find this offensive. And let me just be clear. I also, in the context, even in our society where our Constitution and the rights that were granted to people upon our founding were reserved at that time for wealthy white landowning men, I do not extrapolate from that and say things like, well, this guy's a white man, so therefore X. I find that offensive. I find it reductive. I find it dehumanizing. So let's just be clear about consistency. Now let's go talk about this man and how he came to where he did. And again, I am not saying that all these things, because this training gave him the skills in the mental state, perhaps, to engage in this crime. That doesn't mean, again, that we should round up everybody who was trained this way and lock them up, right? We have plenty of people, who, again, I want to be clear, but what we should understand maybe is the consequences of our behavior and what the fallout can be, and not use a tragedy like this to engage in racism, xenophobia, and illegality. We'll talk about that in a second, but let's first talk about what we learned about the shooter. Let's go.
Is that he comes here from Afghanistan. Now, this is a guy who's been living in Washington State, not Washington, D.C., on the other end of the country. He comes here from Afghanistan in the summer of 2021. Remember what that was like. Refugees fleeing Afghanistan, people had to be recommended by U.S. people on one end, vetted on this end by government background checks as far as they could do in Afghanistan, have sponsors and so on. He settled in Washington. He applies for asylum in December of 2024. Now he goes through another vetting process involving that, and he's approved for asylum in April of this year under the Trump administration. He comes in under the Biden administration. These checks are being done. I remember as a part of the Joint Terrorism Task Force in New York, where we supplied people for that vetting process, it was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of people. They were being kept in military installations. A lot of that vetting had to be done very quickly. I also remember we had to go back afterwards when we found information on certain people and bring them back. In this case, that's all we know about this individual, but it appears that he must have done work either for or with the United States in Afghanistan to become part of the Allies Welcome Program and be brought here. That still doesn't get us closer to motive.
No, although.
Okay. So that was a little background. We have more since that CNN broadcast, and I'm going to share with you some reporting from the New York Times. So, of course, I'm showing you here on the left. This is again Andrew Wolf, who's a U.S. Air Force Staff Sergeant who was with the National Guard in D.C. outside of this. I think it was the Farragut West subway station. And then there is, of course, Sarah Beckstrom, who is now deceased. We hope the best for Andrew Wolf and his family. And this is Lakhanwal. He's 29 years old. This is the Afghan national. His name is Ramanullah Lakhanwal. And there he is, young guy. There's his photo. And here's what I'm sharing. This is a headline from the New York Times, and I'm going to actually share with you the New York Times article. DC shooting suspect could not tolerate the violence of his CIA-backed unit in Afghanistan, a childhood friend said. And here is more of the story. This is, we have 4 different bylines on it. Julian Barnes, Hamed Aliaziz, Eliane Peltier, and Saifullah Padshah. And Peltier and Padshah reported from Kabul. So this is very on-the-ground reporting. Okay, the Afghan refugee accused of shooting 2 National Guard members in Washington, D.C., fought in the late days of the U.S. war there as part of a Zero Unit, a paramilitary force that worked with the CIA, according to a person briefed on the investigation and an Afghan intelligence officer familiar with the matter. The units were known for their brutality and labeled death squads by human rights groups. The suspect, identified by federal officials, is Ramanullah Lakhanwal, 29, grew up in a village in the eastern province of Khost. So let me just share with you this page and that this is on in the Times now, so you can see what my source is here. Oops, I'm so sorry. Here we go. Okay, so this is the full article here. Hello. DC shooting suspect could not tolerate the violence of his CIA-backed unit. He said, now, this is a subhead. The CIA and an Afghan intelligence official said that the shooter had been part of an Afghan partner force known as a Zero Unit, and supported by the CIA in the southern province of Kandahar. Okay, so that's what we knew. He grew up in the eastern province of Khost. A childhood friend who asked to be identified only as Muhammad because he feared Taliban reprisals said that Mr. Lakhanwal had suffered from mental health issues and was disturbed by the casualties his units had caused. He would tell me and our friends that their military operations were very tough. Their job was very difficult, and they were under a lot of pressure, Muhammad said. The suspect received asylum from the U.S. government in April. So, guys, you know that's the Trump administration, according to 3 people with knowledge of the case who were not authorized to speak publicly. A little more, members of the Zero units were among the thousands of Afghans relocated to the United States under the Biden administration after the chaotic withdrawal of U.S. troops in August 2021, which allowed the Taliban to retake control of the country. Federal officials said that Mr. Lakhanwal was part of that program and had resettled with his family in Washington state. Now, of course, the Trump administration is blaming the Biden administration. Let's just say a little bit more about the unit he was in. That his friend said this was he was part of the Afghan intelligence service, and they had been trained for, and I'm reading now, nighttime raids targeting suspected Taliban members, and were accused by human rights groups of widespread killing of civilians. According to this article, Mr. Lakhanwal, the alleged shooter, his brother was a deputy commander of the Zero unit in Kandahar, which was known as 03. So this is obviously he fled to the United States because the Taliban would have killed him. Now, I'm going to stop sharing that. So, I mean, all of this is complicated. There are folks who, think that we should not have withdrawn from Afghanistan. I have friends in the human rights community who think that. And of course, this was planned, though. Donald Trump planned the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and apparently it was just to be clear. I'm just going to share. This is from factcheck.org, just so you remember who planned this, how it was executed, because I think there's going to be a lot of the blame game, and something we should remember in the context of war and in the context of trying to protect people from human rights abuses. Nothing is easy, and this particular shooting should not be looked at as an excuse for what Donald Trump is trying to plan. Okay, so let's look at this just so we can remember. This is from factcheck.org, and this is the withdrawal from Afghanistan timeline. So in February of 2020, and of course, this is during Donald Trump's first term, the U.S. and the Taliban signed an agreement to withdraw by May 1st, 2021. Okay, and so at that point, Donald Trump might have thought he was going to win a second term. But to be clear, the withdrawal would have happened after his first term ended. At the time of this agreement, according to factcheck.org, there were 13,000 troops in Afghanistan. Okay, so part of it is getting those U.S. troops out. And there were at that time 5,000 Taliban fighters who were going to be released as part of this exchange. Okay, so this is the plan, and Donald Trump gave this big speech in February of 2020. Then in March, we have the president of Afghanistan objecting to the agreement that would require his country to release these 5,000 Taliban prisoners because he doesn't want them free. They're dangerous people. So let's keep in mind, just so you see this, Trump agreed with the Taliban to end the war. And, the president of Afghanistan a few days later or literally a day later, because it's February 29th, Leap Day, the next day, the president of Afghanistan is, what the hell? Then we get Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that the Senate Armed Services Committee reported that the Taliban said they would not attack U.S. troops. Okay, so there's Despite that, the Taliban did attack one of the provinces. So now we're getting, this is the president of Afghanistan buckles to pressure from the U.S. and releases 1,500 Taliban prisoners, orders the release of them, but only 100 a day. Okay, so this is happening. All this is happening, and I'm going to now jump ahead. That even under Trump's administration, his Secretary of Defense is saying this is November after he loses the election, but is denying it, that they're going to reduce the number of troops. Again, in December of 2020, they're still talking about this. Okay, so Donald Trump leaves office in January, and Biden, of course, follows through with his campaign promise to continue the end of the war in Afghanistan. And this is in February, it's in March. And Biden says it's going to be hard to meet the May deadline. It's going to be hard to get the troops out. Donald Trump set the May deadline. Then in April, Biden announces, okay, I'm not going to meet the May deadline, but I'm going to meet a deadline in September. Okay. And it just, this goes on and on and on. And then we get to in August, before the, well before the September deadline, we end up in, you have Trump saying this, I started the process, Trump said. All the troops are coming back home. They couldn't stop the process. So he takes ownership of this. And then by July, they're getting to the final withdrawal. Okay, so Donald Trump was taking credit for giving a tight deadline of May, which Biden couldn't meet. And then we get what we get. Okay, so I just want to give you that time frame. So we have this chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, which would have been even more chaotic if they tried to meet the May deadline that Donald Trump put out there. And of course, when you're releasing that many members of the Taliban, it's not shocking. It is expected that they would take over. And of course, the members of the Afghan military who were working and trained by the CIA needed to get out. And so when it is said that this guy, the alleged shooter, right? When we know that this alleged shooter, Lochinwall, he's 29 years old right now, right? So let's think about this. He's 29 years old right now. He was 25 when he got out. He was in his 20s when he was being trained by the CIA. And he's been here and he's been living in Washington State, right? But let's be clear. He came to the US as part of the withdrawal for his safety. He was vetted at that time. And then he applied for asylum under the second Trump asylum. And then under the second Trump administration, this April, the Trump administration granted him asylum. So them's are the facts. And this is why we get to Trump's meltdown. So I've already showed you the press conference where he seemed to have no concern about Sarah Beckstrom. And now I want to share with you Donald Trump being in absolute denial about his administration's responsibility here. Let me play this for you.
Suspect worked very closely with the CIA in Afghanistan for years, that he was vetted, and the vetting came up clean.
He went cuckoo. I mean, he went nuts. And that happens, too. It happens too often with these people. You see them. But look, this is how they come in. This is how they're standing on top of each other. And that's an airplane. There was no vetting or anything. They came in unvetted. And we have a lot of others in this country. We're going to get them out. But they go cuckoo. Something happens to them.
Your DOJ IG just reported this year that there was thorough vetting by DHS and by the FBI of these Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden administration for what this man did?
Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here, and you're just asking questions because you're a stupid person. And there's a law passed that it's almost impossible not to get them out. You can't get them out once they come in. And they came
That's
in, and
a
they were
lie,
unvetted, they
people.
were unchecked, there were many of them, and they came in on big planes, and it was disgraceful. And if you look, you'll see there was a law passed. It makes it almost impossible not to let them in, not to certify them, so to speak, once they come in. And they came in, and they shouldn't have come in. And frankly, the whole thing was a mess. The whole Afghanistan situation was a mess. It should have never taken place. If we're going to go out, and we would have gone out because I had everybody ready to go, we were going to go out with strength and dignity and precision, and we would have left from Bagram, and we would have kept Bagram, by the way, because of its very close relationship to China and where they make their missiles. But when you let...
Okay. When he is calling people stupid or ugly, which he just recently did, or piggy, he is losing. He is losing. If you can get Donald Trump to call you stupid, that means you have touched a nerve. Let's not focus on how rude it is that he did that. Because then it's, oh, how terrible. The press didn't stand up for her. No. Focus on hit dogs will holler. Okay? She hit a nerve. So when you hear him talk about, I would have done this and I would have done that, haven't you heard that before? Donald Trump's like, oh, if I'd been president, there'd be no war in Ukraine. Donald Trump, when he's running for office, I'll end that war in a day. Donald Trump saying, I'll bring prices down. He'll say anything. But the facts are his own IG set, his own Inspector General, right? His own IG, let's just play that again, said that just that one part, that his administration granted asylum. Okay, I'm just going to add that
these
part again.
Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden?
Okay, here we go.
IG just reported this year that there was thorough vetting by DHS and by the FBI of these Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden administration
Because
for
they
what
let
this
him
man
in.
did?
Are you stupid?
She's calling him out on his lies. And he's lying. Oh, once people are in, you just have to give them asylum. Come on, people. Do you believe that? And it gets even worse. There was another reporter after that who follows up, and he starts to get really angry about that. Let's play it.
Do you believe that Afghans? Do you believe that
About
Afghans?
this asylum claim that is being floated. Of course, you just detailed that this suspect was flown in under the Biden administration.
Yeah.
But was he granted asylum under your administration?
When it comes to asylum, when they're flown in, it's very hard to get them out. No matter how you want to do it, it's very hard to get them out. But we're going to be getting them all out now. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That slamming of the table, he is just angry. This is okay, let's just blow this up. I just want you to see how flippin' he is angry. He slams the table. He lies about asylum. So here's where they're going with it. How they're just creating a narrative that immigrants are all bad. They all need to leave. And let's just be clear. If we are in situations where we need to be at war, or are at war, and we need people on the ground to cooperate with the U.S., how is that going to even work if we're saying we're going to send everyone who worked with us in the Afghan military back to be murdered by the Taliban? Does this make any sense to you? No. It ain't going to happen. He is failing. His approval ratings are plummeting. He is a lunatic. Okay, and I want you to see what he does next, how he turns us into this sort of racist rant. Let's play this.
These people are criminals. Many of these people are people that shouldn't be here. And many of them have been gotten out. I mean, we've gotten out a lot of the people that, we've taken a lot of them out of here.
But many,
But they
many
came
are
in.
legally, right?
Yeah, I know. This deal, sorry. Many are wonderful. Yeah,
No,
I'm sure.
I said many are here legally, though. What should they think in terms of their prospects?
Well, they can't be happy, okay? They can't be happy because what's taking place between that, if you look at Somalia, they're taking over Minnesota, and they are.
Wait, Somalia's taking over Minnesota. You know, when people come to the US to live the American dream and are here lawfully on a kind of temporary protected status, and people are happy in the communities to have folks here, and he calls it taking over. This isn't even dog whistles. This is pure on white supremacy. Let's continue.
We got a lot of problems with the gangs, with all of the things taking place in Minnesota. We have an incompetent governor, a dope. We have a dope governor. They can't be happy about what's going on. And if you talk about the Afghans, you know, there's a problem because so many bad ones came in on the planes. They just walked in. Whoever the strongest people were physically in a way, but whoever the strongest, they got on the planes. There was no checking. They just swamped the planes. They took off.
I mean, he's just lying. Okay, let's
I
continue.
had no idea who they were.
And by the way, is it possible that some strong people jumped on the planes? I don't know. But guess what? Why did he grant this guy asylum if he was just one of these strong people we didn't know who he was? No, we absolutely knew who he was. He was in one of the elite units that was assassinating members of the Taliban and probably others, which is why human rights organizations were concerned and probably why he was freaking out about what he did.
Yeah, do you want to ask a question behind?
Me? Hi, sir. Happy
Sure.
Thanksgiving.
Hi.
What do the Somalians have to do with this Afghan guy who shot the national?
Nothing, but Somalians have caused a lot of trouble. They're ripping us off for a lot of money. There's a tremendous amount of money going back to Somalia. What the hell are we paying money to Somalia for? But they're ripping off our country at a level that few people have been able to see before. Mm-hmm. That's about the only thing. You talk about competence. We have Ilhan Omar, who does nothing but complain about our country and our Constitution. And she comes from a country with practically no country. It's devastated, it's crime-ridden, it's a mess, it's a disgrace. And we took their people at a tremendous... We're not taking their people anymore.
He didn't answer the question. What does Somalia and immigrants who've come here lawfully from Somalia have to do with a deranged shooter who is allegedly from this elite CIA-trained unit in Afghanistan? He doesn't answer it. And no one asks, are you associating them because their skin is brown? It's implicit. Now, let's talk now, before we get to crazy town, about Trump losing it. Because after this press conference, and there was more where he was talking about his golf game and saying how many golf tournaments he won, which we know he cheats at golf, but even though he cheats at golf, the numbers of tournaments he claims he won were huge. And the person yesterday who he said he won, he's like, I beat a 27-year-old, he's saying. He beat a 27-year-old at golf, and he's bragging about that. And I don't even know, this is a press conference on Thanksgiving about the murder of a young person in her 20s by a young man in his 20s. And that's what he chooses to talk about. Okay, so let's go to this. This was last night at 11:26 p.m. And I realize that it might be small for you, but I want you to see this, and you can always take a screenshot and read it later. But he has this rant, and this is where he is headed. Now, obviously, this was dictated to him by someone like Stephen Miller, because this is his language. Here's what he is promising now to do. Quote, I will permanently pause migration from all third world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover. What else is he going to do? Terminate all of the millions of Biden illegal admissions, including those, and he goes on talking about alleging Biden's using an auto pen. Okay. And remove, and by the way, let me just back up for a second here. 1 second. Let's just get out of this shot. If you've ever signed anything, like I had to sign copies of, I think it was my most recent book. And I remember my first book, I remember signing copies for the publisher. And, oh my God, I had to sit in a room. I think the second one was during COVID. So I think I had to sign, I don't know what happened. I can't remember, but I remember the first time they had this giant table of books and I had to sign. And I had to sign these books to send them out to people. So I had to make a little note. I mean, it took hours to sign and your hand is sore. It would have been nice to have an auto pen because then I could have held the book under it and have it signed, right? That would have been great. That wouldn't mean I wasn't supervising this, right? When photos are signed by people, that can happen. I think the concern people talk about with the auto pen is that what if someone on your team is using your auto pen to sign legislation you haven't agreed to and so on, or pardons you didn't agree to, right? So this is the allegation Trump makes, but of course, every allegation is projection. But let's just go to this again. So he's saying he's going to undo all the admissions of people to the U.S. Now, this is the part that seems really even more excessive. He says he's going to remove anyone who is not a net asset to the U.S. And he says he's going to denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility and deport any foreign national who is not compatible with Western civilization. Okay. What is he talking about when he talks about denaturalizing? This is hugely dangerous. Trump has talked about this before. Denaturalizing means if someone became a U.S. citizen, they went through all the process, they took the test, they took the oath, and they are a U.S. citizen. He's claiming that he can take that away from them. There is no legal basis for that, period. And it's a huge problem if he thinks he can denaturalize people for a zillion reasons. They want to couple denaturalization with birthright citizenship. Remember that? And if they get both, the disaster that this could be for any and all of us is tremendous. Because the minute you think you can take away someone's citizenship that was granted because, they stepped through the hoops and they were sworn in, then what happens and then you take away birthright citizenship, then what happens to whole families of people and so on. Now, he also, and this is also crazy. Take a look at this. I don't even think you can read this, but this is another rant of his about people from Somalia. And ultimately, I think this says it quite well. Jamal Bowie of the New York Times, a columnist, says this is just gutter racism. And this is John Q. Public on Blue Sky says Stephen Miller is now arguing that assimilation is fundamentally impossible and that certain cultures are not compatible with Western civilization. Here's what Stephen Miller is responding to. Someone named Dan Brown shares this clip from the Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal editorial on Afghan refugees. And they say, the Wall Street Journal editorial says, Afghan refugees shouldn't be blamed for the violent act of one man. Collective punishment of all Afghans in the U.S. won't make America safer, and it might embitter more again. In response to that, over on Twitter, Stephen Miller special advisor to the president, said, quote, "This is a great lie of mass migration. You are not just importing individuals, you are importing societies. No magic transformation occurs when failed states cross borders at scale. Migrants and their descendants recreate the conditions and terrors of their broken homelands." What an absolute racist and fascist. And also ignoring the fact that the man, this alleged shooter, if anything, was recreating the training that he received by the CIA. Okay? Now, it is on to Crazy Town. And on Monday, I am debuting the new Crazy Town music. I'll do this on Monday. Thank you, Jason Smith, one of our amazing mods from the Mod Squad. But I don't have it loaded up. It's going to be very exciting. But so for now, you will have to bear with this, my drum roll, and the audience laughter. Okay. If you didn't think he was absolutely losing it, here is Donald Trump trying to figure out what is actually served for Thanksgiving.
Then we go and have a great Thanksgiving, because I don't know about you. You probably had your dinner already, but I didn't. And I know exactly what I'm going to have. Turkey. Okay? I believe it's turkey.
Turkey? I believe it's turkey. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Okay. And so have a lovely long weekend. If you're going to shop and you have the capacity to shop locally, that would be great. Supporting local folks. If you can't and you need to shop online, there's always Etsy, and choosing people who make their stuff by themselves. And there's also you in your own two hands choosing to make something for somebody or do something for somebody. We don't have to give Jeff Bezos any more money than we already do. Anyhow, have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. See you on Monday.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There is hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show.